perpendicular lines intersect at one point, so at a single point, and form a 90-degree right angle. A 90-degree angle means that it makes right angles. And you can look at your hand. If it makes like the L of your hand, it makes a right angle. So slopes of two perpendicular lines, first of all, they are opposites. Okay? First of all, they're opposites. That means one is positive and one is negative. The second thing is that they are going to be reciprocals. So to be perpendicular, it has to meet both of these criteria. Reciprocal means that the numerator and denominator switch. So like if I have 1/3, when I switch it, it would be 3/1. Okay, so that's a reciprocal. Reciprocal is when the numerator and denominator trade places. Opposites is positive and negative. And to be a slope, both of those things must happen. Okay? You can verify that two slopes are perpendicular by multiplying the slopes, and if the outcome is -1, then they are perpendicular. So we're going to graph, and we're going to graph this by hand instead of on the calculator. Remember, you start at 1, so I start at the y-intercept at 1. The slope tells me to go up and to the right, so I'm going to go up 2/3, 1, 2, 3. Up 2/3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so I'm going to draw my line. Now, let's look at the second one. The second one, I'm going to start at -3 on the y-axis, 1, 2, 3. And since it's negative, I'm going to go down and to the right. So down 3, 1, 2, 3/2. Okay. Now, when I draw this, notice these are right angles. Okay. So those are perpendicular. On the next one, example 2, +4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the slope tells me to go down 1 and to the right 1. Okay, remember, if it's a whole number, you put over 1. So down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1, down 1/1. Okay, there's your line. The second equation, y equals x plus 1, start at +1. And my slope, since it's positive, I go up 1/1, up 1/1, up 1/1. And they're going to intersect, and again, it makes 90-degree angles. Notice, let's look at the slopes. You had -1, and here you have 1. -1 and 1. We said when you multiply those, -1 times 1 is a -1. If it gives you a -1, then they are perpendicular. Your slopes on example 1 were 2/3 and -3/2. So if I multiply 2/3 times -3/2, first of all, notice they're opposites. One is positive, the other is negative. So they're opposites. The other thing is they're reciprocals. See, if I flip that over, 2 and 3, they trade places. When I multiply that, I get -1. So they are perpendicular. Okay? So let's look at what the slope would be if I were just looking at a slope. So let's say the slope is 2/3. To be perpendicular means two things has to happen. This one is positive, so my slope has to be negative to be perpendicular. Second thing, I have to trade places. So that'd be 5/2. So my slope would be -5/2. On the second one, the slope is negative, so this one would have to be positive. 1/6 has to trade places, so that'd be 6/1. So the slope would be +6. On example 5, I have a negative, so my slope would have to be positive, and then I'd have to reciprocal. So I have to flip, so that'd be 9/4. So +9/4. The second one, example 6, this is a positive, so my slope would have to be negative. And I have to take the reciprocal, but there's not a denominator, so remember, put 7/1. Now flip it, and it'd be 1/7. So my slope would be -1/7. So let's look at example 7. Write the equation of the line in point slope form that goes through point 3, 4, so there's my x and my y, and is perpendicular. Now remember, to be perpendicular, you got opposite and you got reciprocal. It has to do both. So let's look at our slope. The slope of the original line is 1/4. Okay? Now, I have to do two things. First of all, this is positive, so it's going to have to be negative, okay? And then you've got to flip it. So instead of 1 over 4, I'm going to have 4 over 1. So my new slope is negative 4. The x is 3, the y is positive 4. So the equation in point slope form, I'm going to write it to the side first. Y minus 4 equals, my slope is negative 4, parentheses, x minus 3. There's not any minus and negative, so I'm good. Y minus 4 equals negative 4, parentheses, x minus 3. Point slope, you get to keep the parentheses. Example 8, write the equation of the line in point slope form that goes through, okay, I have x and y. So x is 6, y is negative 2. That is perpendicular to y equals 3x. So my slope is 3. That's what's in front. Remember, to be perpendicular, I have to do the opposite. So the opposite of 3 is a negative. The opposite of positive is a negative. And then I have to flip it. Well, there's not a fraction here, so put it over 1. Now flip it, and that's 1 over 3. So negative 1/3. So I'm going to write my equation out to the side. Y minus negative 2 equals negative 1/3, parentheses, x minus 6. And then you have two negatives, like minus and negative, so I have to rewrite that. Y plus 2 equals negative 1/3, parentheses, x minus 6. And that is my equation of a perpendicular line in point slope form. This time we want to write the equation of a line in slope intercept form. That means no parentheses, okay? That passes through, you have your x and your y value, and is perpendicular to negative, y equals negative 2x plus 3. So my slope is negative 2. Remember, to be perpendicular, the opposite of a negative is a positive, and then I have to flip it. Well, 2 over 1 becomes 1 over 2. So my slope is 1 over 2. My x value is 2. My y value is negative 10. So come write your equation first. Y minus negative 10 equals 1/2, parentheses, x minus 2. And I have two negatives, so two negatives make a positive. Y plus 10 equals 1/2, parentheses, x minus 2. Now that's point slope form, okay? Now I need to go to slope intercept, so I have to get rid of the parentheses. So remember, now I have to distribute. So I'm going to write out to the side, y plus 10 equals 1/2 x minus 1. Then you've got to solve for y, so move your 10 to the other side, becomes a negative 10. So y equals 1/2 x, and then minus 1 minus 10 would be minus 11. So y equals 1/2 x minus 11. So if you need to go out to the side to write that, feel free to do that. On example 10, write the equation of the line in slope intercept form, so no parentheses, that passes through. Remember, you got your x and your y, and is perpendicular to y equals negative x plus 5. So the slope is negative 1. Now, if it's perpendicular, so the opposite of a negative is a positive, and you've got to flip it. So 1 over 1 is still 1 over 1, so it's just positive 1. The x value is 4, and the y value is negative 1. So now I'm going to write my equation out to the side first. Y minus negative 1 equals 1, parentheses, x minus 4. I have minus and negative, so I need to rewrite that. Y plus 1 equals 1, parentheses, x minus 4. Now to go to slope intercept form, I have to distribute to get rid of the negative. So y plus 1 equals 1x minus 4. You got to solve for y, so positive 1 becomes a minus 1. So y equals 1x, and then negative 4 minus 1 is a negative 5. So y equals 1x minus 5. And you're done. Now on part 4, determine if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So a couple things you can do. Look at the slope. My slope here is 6, and my slope here is negative 1/6. Okay? Now remember, we said that you could multiply those, so I'm gonna multiply 6 times negative 6, 6 times negative 1 divided by 6. And you get negative 1. So this gives me negative 1. So these are perpendicular. Okay, these are perpendicular. You have a positive and you have a negative, and then the 6 over 1. When I flip it, when I take the reciprocal, they trade places. So that's perpendicular. Look at number 12. Number 12, the slope is 3. And then by the x, my slope is 3. Well, those are the same. If they're the same, then they are parallel. Okay, so these are parallel. Number 1, they are perpendicular. Number 2, they are parallel. Well, look at 13. 13, you have 3, and then you have 1/3. Well, I'm going to try multiplying those. Okay, so 3 times, and you can always set it as a fraction. And then enter, and that gives you a positive 1. Well, it has to be a negative 1. So this would be neither. Okay, the reason is this is a positive and that's a positive. They are both a positive. You can't have them both a positive. They have to be different. And so that's why it is neither. And that's how you determine if they're parallel or perpendicular. And that's how you write equations for perpendicular lines.